Hey everybody. So today I want to talk about misdiagnosis. I kind of feel like that's a loaded term. It's really more the journey to your actual diagnosis. And I know a lot of us have similar experiences, so I'm just going to get into it. For me, when I first got my tremor, I went to a primary care physician, and immediately he started talking to me about reducing stress, anxiety, maybe getting on antidepressants, things like that. And for me, it was kind of disappointing because it made me feel like I was crazy. Like, I don't have anything against people who take antidepressants. I've taken them myself, but I was feeling like something was very wrong with me physically. And to me, it felt kind of dismissive to say, like, basically, you're just emotional, like, let's give you some medication for that. And I remember telling him, like, yeah, I am depressed and yeah, I am emotional because my body's doing stuff that it's never done before and nobody's doing anything to help me stop it. So he was a really nice doctor, and this post is not a criticism of any of the providers that I've had. It's just how the system works. And he sent me to a physical therapist and had me do a CT on my shoulder because he suspected also perhaps a compressed nerve because I have pain in my neck and shoulder. And so I got that. It was negative. I went to physical therapy. That ended up not, improving my symptoms at all. So the physical therapist wrote a report and sent it back to my primary care and discharged me from their care because it wasn't helping. So when I went back to my primary care, at that time, when I had gone in for that initial visit, he had ordered a bunch of preventative tests, so like your mammogram, colonoscopy, bone density scan, labs, all that. And apparently there had been some findings in my mammogram. So he was really focused more on me getting a breast ultrasound and figuring out what was going on with the findings in my mammogram. He didn't seem particularly concerned with what was going on with my tremor. I also, at that time, he started bringing up essential tremor, which is what I think his next kind of conclusion was. And that's when I was put on propranolol, which is a very common drug for essential tremor. So anyway, at that point, I realized, this guy's priorities and my priorities are not aligned. I mean, he was really awesome, and I liked him a lot, but it was like dual purposes, or maybe I was just impatient. I don't know. But I, at that visit, asked specifically for a referral to a neurologist, and he gave it to me. And thank goodness the breast thing ended up not being anything of concern, although I could make a whole other video about that because that was a crazy thing too that I went through with all that at the same time. So when I went to the neurologist, she looked at me and how I walked and immediately brought up Parkinson's. She didn't diagnose me per se, she just said that's what she suspected. And that happens a lot when we're on these sort of journeys to diagnosis, as I call them. Like, you're, as you should be, kind of involved in the doctor's thought process of like, it might be this, it might be that, and that's great. But saying it might be Parkinson's is kind of saying like it might be stage 4 colon cancer, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, okay, well, let's see where that goes. Like, then it sticks in your mind and you sort of like doom scroll, death spiral into, the rabbit hole of this possibility. And as you guys know, if you see my other posts, after I saw that first neurologist, I switched neurologists. And the next neurologist that I went to had a completely different approach. He was like, we're gonna do all these tests until we eliminate every possibility except Parkinson's. And then if the Parkinson's is the last man standing, we'll know you have Parkinson's. So then I started having all the other tests. So I had many MRIs. And the first MRI came back showing that I had a lesion on my brain. And once again, when they tell you you have a lesion on your brain, you're like, well, here we go. I probably have like brain cancer or something. And it turns out the way it was explained to me is that a lesion on your brain could be from a lot of things, and that the MRI doesn't actually tell them how long you've had it. So you could have had that, like I could have had that lesion on my brain my whole life, and it was really small. And it was on the part of my brain that's not connected to my right side. So for those of you that don't know, your brain is divided into two hemispheres, the right and the left. And if you have a symptom on your left side, it corresponds to the opposite side of the brain. So my tremor on the right, I should have had some finding on my brain on the left, but I didn't. I had a finding on the right side. So that was weird. But he did tell me that where that lesion was is someplace where MS lesions like to hang out. Very scientific. So then I started on this whole road about MS. Many MRIs, brain, spine. I had a lumbar puncture, and that kind of threw everything out too, because there were findings in my lumbar puncture that showed demyelination. And then everybody was like, it's MS, it's MS, it's MS. And something about that diagnosis just never rang true for me. And I'll tell you why. One of the first symptoms I had was when I woke up, my hand and my arm would be asleep. And it progressed to the point where sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and have that feeling of my hand and arm being asleep. I know what nerve pain feels like. That symptom that I had early on, it went away. I've actually never had that again. But the MS workups are always asking you, like, does it feel like pins and needles? Does it feel like pins and needles? And I've never had that pins and needles feel in association with my Parkinson's or my tremor or anything like that. What I have with that is a very different kind of spasm and contraction and pulling. So I had talked to enough people in like both communities to know that I just didn't really sit right with MS. So that's when I went to the fourth neurologist at Mayo, and I met with the MS specialist, and they did 2 independent workups. They met and they said immediately, we don't think this is MS, that the findings in your lumbar puncture, the CSF study, were probably incidental findings and could be from inflammation from other things. And that's when I saw the movement disorder specialist who diagnosed me with Parkinson's. So anyway, I just wanted to share this story to sort of illustrate to everyone, like, it's a rocky road out there. It's a bit of a roller coaster ride. I hope everybody can just really stick to their guns, listen to their body, and really help their providers like communicate with us and know what's going on so that you can get to a diagnosis that makes sense for you faster than I did. So I hope this helps.